Get started. Thank you all for joining the 6th annual Wallkill River Summit. This is going to be the first of 2 virtual summits in our summit series. So these are going to be recorded, and then we're going to hang on to them so they can be shared virtually going forward. My name is Kyle Sitzman. I am currently the chair of the board of the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance. I have been on the board for about 2 years now, and I've been a chair for since we've become an incorporated not-for-profit. Quick thank you to our sponsors. We have Milone MacBroom, specializing in flood mitigation, river restoration, and community resilience. Milone MacBroom is proud to support the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance. To learn more, go to www.mminc.com. And thank you to Save Tillson Lake, the only place in Minnewaska State Park designated for fishing and one of 2 lakes where boating is allowed, a critical wildlife and wetland habitat that helps control pollution and protect the watershed. Visit savetillsonlake.org. And to Ulster Savings, who is proud to support the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance. Banking with Ulster Savings makes a difference. We give, we help, we care, with locations throughout the Hudson Valley. Visit ulstersavings.com. And to Mohonk Consultations, proud to support the work and vision of the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance. For 40 years, they've gathered to take it over at Mohonk. They look forward to welcoming us to the mountain and seeing us online. And without further ado, I will turn it over to Arif Khan, who is a project consultant of the Wallkill River Watershed Trail. He has a lot of experience in designing trails. And to Emily Vail, the executive director of the Hudson River Watershed Alliance. She'll be, her talk is titled "Get to Know Your Watershed."
All right, thank you, Kyle. You can hear me? Everyone can hear me? All right, let's see. Bear with me, this is my first Zoom presentation, so please be kind. So welcome, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well in this time. My name is Arif Khan. I was a project consultant, as Kyle mentioned, for the Wallkill River Water Trail, working for and with Dave Church and the folks at the Orange County Water Authority, and also with the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance. A lot of the volunteers, the paddlers of the Alliance were very helpful in my work. So my plan right now is to just go over the project and let you know the process and what we did and what we produced. But basically, the outputs from this project were a website. It's called paddlethewallkill.org, and I'll go over that in a bit. And the website, it basically documents. The core of it is a Google map that documents the public access points of the Wallkill River between the New Jersey border to Esopus. So it's 65 miles, and I paddled all of it, not in one stretch, but in a number of different stretches, and it was great. It was a great experience, and let me walk you through. So I'm going to go over the overview of the project, the approach, a little bit about the Wallkill River, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, our findings, and then the next steps, kind of where the project is now. It's kind of hard for me to do this without feedback, but like as far as can't see anyone's expressions. But Kyle, I guess folks will put questions in the Q&A box if they have questions, and Emily or Kyle, let me know if I'm going too fast or too slow. Okay, there we go. Let me move this out of the way. So the goal, oh, here's my question. How do I move this box? Let's see, out of the way of, okay. So the goal, we set the goal to increase and improve recreational paddling use. So raft, canoe, kayak, I guess stand-up paddleboard. So that was the purpose of it. And like I mentioned, it was from the New Jersey border to Rosendale, New York, 65 miles. And so how we would go about this as a first step is create a plan with identifying an existing, both existing and potential launch points and segments. So what we came up with is an ideal, with the Wallkill River, it has a number of impediments, meaning large dams that require portage or portage. And so it's not an ideal river for long distance paddles. It's perfect for day trips. And also, and part of our strategy was to reach out to beginner paddlers. So creating this idea of like short trips that, you know, families could make. It's a slow moving river, so it's very family friendly. There's not class 5 you know, rapids or drops on it. So it's, for the most part, it's a friendly, easy river. So we thought it's perfect opportunity for recreation, especially during a time like this. If you need new forms of recreation where you need to social distance, the Wallkill is perfect. Many days where I was out on the river, there would be no one there. So if you're looking to get away, the Wallkill River is a great river. So, oops, let me do this. So, yeah, like I mentioned, looking at existing public access points and potential launch points. And we did look at public and private. Obviously, public owned property is lower hanging fruit, but we did look at private access points if there could be in the future negotiated easements or access to the river, especially if it was in a crucial point. And also there were opportunities for partnerships with private entities. One of them being City Winery, which was planned to open this year. So I'd met with the owner, Michael Dorff, about him providing, and that's in Montgomery. It's at the old woolen mills in Montgomery. But I talked to him about providing access points before and after the dam that he's got there that generates electricity. And he was open to it, so. So what I did is I prioritized access improvements. The ones that require the least amount of investment would be kind of higher priority, and especially if they were in a place where there was no other access. I mentioned that 2-hour distance, rough distance between access points. So if there was no other access points miles around, we would prioritize that. If it was, you know, we have a number of criteria, and I can share the actual report. So prioritizing access improvements, but then the next step would be to publicize and promote public access. And this presentation is part of that. So I think many people in the Watershed Alliance are aware of it, but I see there's attendees that are not part of the Watershed Alliance, and now you're aware of it. So another thing we wanted to do was formalize and standardize access in terms of signage. And that part of the project is being done. My part was to look at all the access points, and then the signage was to be done by Orange County Water Authority in cooperation with the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance. Why a river trail? As Kyle mentioned, I've done a lot of trail planning, but most of that was on land. So why a river trail? I mean, a river trail has the same benefits as the land trails, you know, biking and walking. It improves quality of life. It gives you opportunity to exercise, opportunity to get away from normal stresses. There's environmental benefits. The more people experience nature, and I think probably everyone on this call will agree, the more that they care. And then there's economic benefits. I mean, Ulster County and Orange County also, where the Wallkill River passes through, a lot of their economy is based on tourism. So the more tourist amenities you have, the better for the economy. Also, with people moving here, it's like the quality of life thing. People move to places for quality of life. So if there's access to trails, and that has been proven with you know, biking and walking trails, proximity to trails increases property values and provides opportunities for businesses. So I saw that there was also economic benefits of developing a river trail. So what I did, I looked at books. There are books and documents of people who've previously paddled the Wallkill. I didn't want to start from scratch. There's not a lot of people who've paddled the entire stretch of the Wallkill, but But I did find a couple of books. I've met with a lot of people who are part of the Watershed Alliance who've paddled the majority of the river. Started with that, and then actually paddled myself. And I have to thank my wife for picking me up in random places. Some were public places and some were private, and I won't get into details about that. But let's say I did a bunch of trespassing because I missed a public access point which wasn't marked, which thereby strengthens the argument to have marked public access to the river from a safety point of view. I did go down a couple of drops that I didn't want to go down, but I survived. So yes, I mentioned target users, beginning to intermediate target kayakers, looking for recreational opportunities. So I mentioned the 2 hours, and what, I mean, it depends on the flow and which section of the river you're at. And of course the rainfall, how fast the river's moving. But what I gauged using a number of people is 2 hours takes about 4 to 6 miles on the Wallkill. And of course, this is an average. If you're racing and training, you can get further than 6 miles. And if you're just out for a lovely float, you could go 2 hours and 2 miles in 2 hours. But so I mentioned criteria about public access, that the, say, parking lot should be within a certain distance from the river, and the slope of the bank should not be over a certain slope. So I conducted my field work, like I mentioned, and then also relied on some other folks' field work, put everything together, and then issued recommendations. So these are the things I looked at and actually are documented on the website and the map. The river flow and conditions, there's a number of USGS gauges along the river, so I was able to access those and that data. And the nice thing about the paddlethewallkill.org website is I have a dynamic link to the USGS water gauge in Gardner, which is kind of halfway, sort of halfway, or it's a common area where people paddle. So you can see what the flow is at any given time. So I looked at river flow, and then the conditions, like if it's how flat it was, if there's riffles, if there's obstacles. So any major obstacles I noted on the map. And I think I also noted major features. So I documented 25 existing public access points. Those are with legal parking. That means there's enough space outside the white line on the shoulder, or there's off-street parking. And these vary in size, quality, and features. And you'll see on the Google map, you can click on any access point and it'll give you photos, and it'll give you a brief description of that access point in terms of, I think I categorized it in terms of ease of use, ease of access, what else, size of parking lot, whether there are amenities such as bathrooms or drinking water. So there are 12 public properties that are not officially used for public access to the river, but that could be improved. And so that would be for local jurisdictions to improve those. And since finishing this project, and I should note, I didn't note this in the beginning, but I completed this project May of last year, my portion. And so the idea of me putting it on the web where people could access it is that it could be updated easily. And so if there are changes, and I know that 1 or 2 of the towns were in the process of improving access, that can be updated. So it's not a static map that lives on the shelf. It's live for everyone to see, and then it can be updated, sort of crowdsourced. In addition, I noted some private properties where if they served a useful function, that it would be worth investing in an easement or a partnership with that private property owner. Also noted the 4 major dams along the river, which I guess is a safety issue, and so I called them out. And then there's 12 minor obstacles. Those would be, actually those vary depending on the flow, but they would be minor drops or riffles or kind of a rock garden type situation where one would have to maneuver around rocks or be stuck or be in shallow water, so they'll have to get out and walk. And I also noted all the signage that was along the river, and I'll show you a picture of that, but there's about 6 different signs, so there's no standardization, and hopefully as this project moves forward, there can be some kind of standard signs. And I know Dave Church, while he retired from Orange County, he's still involved, and they are developing standard signage, and I hope he will be here at the next event that you guys hold to present on that. So as I mentioned, the Wallkill, it's a slow-moving, north-flowing, which is a bit rare. Originates in Sparta, New Jersey, but I covered the New York State portion, and that goes through Orange County and Ulster County. It joins the Rondout Creek, and then they both flow into the Hudson River, so it is one of the major tributaries of the Hudson, and it passes through 48 municipalities and has 70 named tributaries. So yeah, and this section is between Gardner and New Paltz, that photo. This is where I started. It was, that's my shady van, so it's fits my kayak, so I still have it. So that's Oil City Road in the New Jersey border. Actually, that is technically New Jersey right there, but it's close to the border. I think it's in New Jersey, yeah. So that's a very nice, access, plenty of parking. I think this was a weekday, so I was the only one there. Easy access. And I was just going to take you through a few photos I can run through. I don't want to go through all 65 miles, but I'll just run through a number of photos just to show you varying characteristics of access and river, the river quality, water quality. So this is just paddling through. You pass a number of interesting infrastructure. There's a rail bridge, which folks don't normally see. You know, this is not accessible by road. So there's the Wallkill's great for, as I said, for getting away. Just a few photos I'll tap through, and the width varies and the character. There are some fun little riffles and ledges, which some can paddle over and some will choose to go around. And I noted where there's, whether it's river right or river left, where there's an easier way to get around. That's one more. This is one drop I did not go through. This is in Walden. So I found an interesting historical photo, or actually it's not a photo, it's an illustration. This is what it used to look like. And I forgot what year it is. I don't know if it says on there. But yeah, the river has been changed by man. So I'm sure there might be some paddlers on this call that would take that, but I wouldn't go through that. So this is just an example of one of the access points. It's just sort of as natural as you can get. It's dirt sloped into the river, but it works well if you don't mind getting muddy, and that's should be part of the experience. This is an outdoor experience, so getting muddy should be part of it. In other places, some might recognize this, and I should note that I paddled this river in every season, I suppose. This was, I think, in January. I found that I'm comfortable paddling down to 40 degrees air temperature. So you can see there's still snow on the ground. This is exit 122, access point in Middletown, near Middletown. This is in Montgomery. It's a floating dock, but drainage, I guess, was not dealt with, or the river level gets to a point where it's not really useful. So like I said, the sloped ground is sometimes easy and doesn't cost as much as building floating dock. I did go visit that dock in the summer when the river was a bit lower, and it worked just fine. It's another floating dock. This is north of New Paltz. One thing is maintenance is an issue. I mean, it collects debris, and so one way to use it is to go on the downriver side of that dock. I don't find these as easy to use as just paddling onto shore with a slope that I mentioned, but this works. This is in Walden, where they are planning to improve the site with, I think, a dock. This is a public access I found, and I noted that it's not maintained. This is one of the low-hanging fruit. This is the town of Shawangunk, or Shawangunk, two different pronunciations, but you can tell it's used because there's a no dumping sign, but there was a trail amidst that. I think that's garlic mustard or some other invasive that's taken over. But apart from the overgrowth, it did provide nice access. This is an example of the various signs that you see around. So there's not been standardization. And then, so part of what I mentioned, Orange County Water Authority and the Watershed, or Wallkill River Watershed Alliance will be doing is coming up with standardized signage. So it's easier for wayfinding and creating a sort of standard identity for people to identify as a place to go paddling. So that being said, I will take you to the map. Let's see if this works. Actually, let me do this. I'll take you to the website. How do I? Okay. So this is the website, paddlethewallkill.org. You guys see that, right? Emily, Kyle, can you give me a thumbs up? You see it. So it's a very basic website. I've embedded a Google map in here. And then within the Google map, you can open this up full screen. Let's see, let me try that. If you want to throw an aerial photo as a base, you can. You can click on any of these. And do you see this, the photo to the left, right? So you'll see a photo, a description, a categorization of ease of access, distance to the next launch, approximate boating time to the next launch, and a description of the access site. And here I have 4 photos, so it just give you a sense of what's there. So you can click on any of these sites and you know, get a photo or photos of each spot access point. So you can explore that in your own time. Let me get out of there, go back to the website. And as I mentioned, I put a river dynamic sort of embed of the USGS river gauge. And so what I found is that the best time to float the Wallkill in the section is when it's over 1,000 cubic feet per second. So you can actually see what the average cubic feet per second for that place for the past 80 years is. And I think that's in the, 95 years. Okay, that's the little triangles. And then you can see the current and dynamic. What's today's date? The 12th. Look at that. And it's got a projection, I guess. So right now is a good time to paddle. It's above 1,000 CFS. So that's nice. And then as I mentioned, I tried to crowdsource a bunch of this. So I had a survey in there, and people would enter information about their paddle trips that I could use to compare with my experience. Because like I said, this river changes depending on rain and also dam water releases by the electric company. And that's especially true in the northern end of the river. So let's see, let me get back. So that was the website, and what else do I got? So it'd be great if you guys have questions. I haven't checked the Q&A, but I'm happy to answer questions, collect any feedback, make corrections. We have finalized, well, I finalized my portion, but Orange County Water Authority and the Watershed Alliance will be looking at signs and getting those up. And I think they are going to coordinate the installation of the signs with local jurisdictions, and then publicizing the trail, getting folks to use it. I mean, the more folks that use it, I think it's better. More people will will care about the Wallkill, as we know, which is a challenged river with various issues. So let's see. What else? And let me, maybe I'll go to questions. How do we do this? Let me stop sharing. How about that? Kyle, did you collect questions? Or are there questions? Maybe we'll take this time to open it up.
Yeah, there's one in the Q&A box, which would be easier for people to use than the chat. But the first one in the Q&A box is, are there resources to make a canoe kayak launch site in New Paltz? There is one existing one at Sojourner Truth Park, and some other nearby New Paltz. If you can check the mapper. And if you scroll up in this chat there, I don't know if you have the chat window open.
Yep. Okay. Let's see. Walden Dam area, that one?
Yeah.
Dan Shapley, okay. Speaks about the Walden Dam area. Yeah, and I know you reached out about that. So yeah, that is a great opportunity, and it's in my report of recommendations for when hydro projects apply for licenses. There is some negotiation or opportunity for negotiation. I cannot comment specifically. I'll have to look at my notes, but I can get back to you on that. There's always opportunities for improvements, but I'll have to look at my notes as far as where portage access could be to get around that dam. It is tough because there's 2 dams in Walden, so one would need to make it around both dams, and there are slope issues in Walden, if I remember correctly. But sorry, I don't have more details, but happy to follow up with that. Let's see. Here's a question I can answer. Under normal flow conditions, can you paddle and out and back on most of it? I would say yes. Typically, the northern sections from, I would say, let's say New Paltz to Rosendale is more conducive to out and back. There are other sections where you can do it. As I mentioned, it depends on rainfall and the season, and also, I guess, when they do dam releases. So I would say if you want to do out and back, putting in at Sojourner Truth and heading north to Perrin Bridge and then making it back and going back. Kyle, have you done other sections out and back? And maybe there's others on this call that have.
That's been my primary out and back, has been the Sojourner Truth, launching from Sojourner Truth.
Yeah. That would be the easiest. There are other small sections, and I think I did note, actually I did note it on some of the access points, whether it was appropriate for, or possible or feasible for out and back trips. Let's see. So yeah, I would suggest if folks are interested in learning more about accessing the Wallkill River, go to paddlethewallkill.org. And if they're interested in getting involved in the signage and improving signage, they should talk to Kyle, right?
Yes. Yep.
All right. Well, good.
All right. Thanks,
Well,
Arif.
Yep, sure.
And we're going to switch over to Emily Vail now, who's going to talk to us about getting to know our watershed.
Great. Thank you so much, Kyle and Arif and everyone for joining us here on our modified Wallkill River Summit. So the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance asked me to present on getting to know your watershed and what information is out there. And particularly now, while we're able to access online resources and we're social distancing, what kind of information is out there so that we can get to know our neighborhood watershed a little bit better. So I'm going to give a brief introduction and talk specifically about 3 different web-based mapping tools: the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper, the DECINFO locator, and the Environmental Resource Mapper, what information is on each of these, what they're best used for, at least for a watershed context, and how you might be able to use some of this information. Okay, so most of you are familiar with the Hudson River Watershed Alliance. We're a regional nonprofit that works to unite and empower communities to protect their local water resources. And we do that through education, training, and networking. And while we're not able to do that in person right now, we've moved to platforms like Zoom. And I wanted to give a shout out to the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance for continuing to hold their annual summit, the 6th annual Wallkill River Summit, even now. We know that clean water is so important. We know that access to the Wallkill River is so important, and they're doing so much work to make sure that you all have this information. The Hudson River Watershed Alliance is able to support them in putting this online summit together through our work in partnership with the Hudson River Estuary Program and NEIWPCC. So we wanted to give a shout out to our sponsors for that reason as well. So I'm going to take you through a case study about the PLATTEKILL Creek. The PLATTEKILL is a tributary of the Wallkill River that flows through town of PLATTEKILL, town of Gardner, and town of New Paltz. It's a little over 25 miles long, and it has this very iconic view from the Wallkill Valley Rail Trail that probably many of you recognize. And my thought was, a lot of people are out and taking walks, and maybe you're curious about the PLATTEKILL Creek. So I learned a lot about it as I was putting this together, so I will take you through that. And if this is your home watershed, please let me know in the chat. Okay, so I'm going to go through some web-based tools. So the first one is the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper, which is maintained by the Hudson River Estuary Program at the DEC. And Ingrid Heckel is on the webinar tonight. Thank you, Ingrid, for all your work getting this up and running and keeping it so accessible with such great information. So I have a lot of links in here. I can send this presentation out afterwards, and you'll have, the webinar will be posted as well, but feel free to click on those links and check out these tools. So the first information that I'll show are watersheds and municipal boundaries. So of course, a watershed is the land area that flows to a particular body of water, and it's based on topography. And the watershed delineations in the Hudson Valley Natural Resource Mapper is based on the U.S. Geological Survey Hydrologic Unit Code, or HUC. And HUCs have, the higher the number, the smaller the area. And so the HUC 12 is the smallest available. And these sizes are basically, they've tried to break all of these hydrologic unit codes into similarly sized areas. If you need smaller watershed delineations, you can use a great tool called StreamStats, which allows you to delineate a watershed from a point. So you can pick a particular point and it'll trace the watershed boundary for you. So here's the Hudson River Estuary Watershed. And if we turn on the HUC 8, which is a pretty big size, we see that the Wallkill River and the Rondout Creek together form one HUC 8. If we keep zooming in, we turn the HUC 10s on. This is about the size of an average Hudson River tributary watershed. We've got the Moodna Creek here, we've got the Quasaic Creek here, Fishkill Creek here, but of course the Wallkill is quite large, so it's broken up into several different HUC 10s. This is the Shawngum Kill here, and here's the lower Wallkill watershed. There it is. We'll keep zooming in. This is the Cline-Kill Wallkill River. So it's called the Cline-Kill Wallkill River because it includes the Cline-Kill, even though it's not limited to the Cline-Kill's watershed. Okay. So then we can also turn on the municipal boundaries, and I use this feature all the time because we know that watersheds cross municipal boundaries, and this can be a really easy way to see that we have here, this is the PLATTEKILL Creek flows through here. I didn't turn on the streams layer, but it's coming. And you can see it flows through the town of PLATTEKILL, town of Gardner, and also the town of New Paltz before it hits the Wallkill. Super useful under reference layers are the municipal boundaries. So a couple more key layers on this map, the water body inventory and priority water bodies list, stream classification, and biomonitoring, which all relate to water quality and stream health. So the water body inventory and priority water bodies list is DEC's inventory of water resources statewide. It breaks up water bodies into specific segments and has fact sheets with a summary of water quality based on DEC monitoring for each of those segments. If a water body is not meeting water quality standards for the best use based on stream classification, it may be listed as impaired, and that link has much more information on water quality standards if you want to learn more. So you can go onto the Lower Hudson River Water Body Inventory Priority Water Bodies List webpage, go to the Lower Wallkill River PDF. It's circled for you. This is straight from the PDF, and each segment has a fact sheet. So, but you might not know which segment the PLATTEKILL Creek is. So we can go to the Natural Resource Mapper and turn on the Priority Water Bodies list. Here's the PLATTEKILL Creek here, and we can see that it is no known impact is the assessment. So it's its own segment. There's no known impact, which means it's a healthy stream. And it still does have a fact sheet. That's how I learned that it's 25.5 miles long. But that's not as interesting as, say, the Wallkill River at Lower Main Stem, which on the mapper shows that it needs verification. And so this is the segment of the Wallkill into which the PLATTEKILL Creek flows. So if we pull up that priority water bodies list fact sheet, we can see how long the segment is, what the classification is, the fact that it's impaired, and some information about what it's been tested for and the things that might be causing that impairment. This is a really helpful piece of information, some really great background on our rivers and streams. Stream classification, I'm gonna go through this very quickly, but water bodies are classified as A, B, C, or D based on their best use, whether that's drinking water, swimming, or fishing. A Class A stream is not necessarily higher quality than a Class C stream, but a Class A stream would be for drinking water, where a Class C stream would have a best use of fishing. We still want them to be high quality. And a standard of T or TS would indicate trout or trout spawning. So here on the PLATTEKILL Creek, we have DEC stream classification turned on. We see that it's a darker purple because it is a trout stream. If we click on the lower segment, we see that it's a Class B stream, so it should be suitable for swimming, and it has a standard of BT, so it's a trout stream. Some other important information from the Natural Resource Mapper: riparian areas, floodplains, wetlands and forests, dams, and assessed road streams crossings. We have to zoom in a little bit to get this layer to turn on, but these are the riparian buffer areas that were mapped by the New York Natural Heritage Program. This is another great resource to understand the riparian areas, which are based on the land adjacent to the stream that have the most direct influence on the water quality in that stream. And we see that in some places here where there's a lot of wetlands, those areas are wide, and in other places where the stream is a little bit more confined and maybe steeper, it's a little bit more narrow. So this is a great tool for looking at where riparian buffer protection is especially important, and also where restoration projects can take place. We have FEMA floodplains on here. We've got state-regulated freshwater wetlands, lots of wetlands in the headwaters, and DEC dams along with assessed road stream crossings. So if we pick a road stream crossing, how about that one? That looks good. It's in the town of PLATTEKILL, and this is a severe barrier. And we can go to the NAC, the North American Aquatic Connectivity Project website, and learn more about this particular barrier with some photos and some details why this is a severe barrier for fish to swim upstream. So thanks to Megan Lung for these great pictures and for collecting all this information that's now very accessible. I wanted to quickly go through the DECINFO locator, and this tool I have found to be particularly useful for water infrastructure, in particular SPEDIES permits and MS4 areas. So SPEDIES is the State Pollutant Discharge Elimination System, which regulates discharges to water and groundwater. And these can be municipal, industrial, or private commercial institutional, but most often we think about wastewater treatment plants, like here is the Village of New Paltz wastewater treatment plant that's right along the Wallkill River. MS4 is the Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System, which is a type of SPEDIES permit for stormwater. And urbanized areas that are defined by the US Census are required to implement stormwater management programs. So the MS4 is really dealing with stormwater infrastructure. So here's the DECINFO locator. I've turned on the rivers and streams. This is the DEC regional office in New Paltz. I don't think you can turn that off, but that's great. Here are the wastewater facilities, and we can click on the Village of New Paltz wastewater treatment facility and go directly to its permit. So this also has really important information about permitted discharges from municipal and other wastewater discharges. And then here is the MS4 area. So you can see that parts of the PLATTEKILL Creek are considered an MS4 area. Other key information on the DECINFO locator include water withdrawals and those permits, potential environmental justice areas, and climate smart communities, which that information can be helpful for grant programs. And if you've ever struggled through the PDF maps that predated this mapper, this is such an easy to use and helpful tool. I'm thinking specifically about those MS4 and potential EJ maps. I also wanted to mention the Environmental Resource Mapper. This is an older tool, but still very useful. This shows state or federally protected resources, along with resources of conservation concern. And this is really important if you need to get a permit, or if you want to understand if you might need a permit for specific work. So that's a whirlwind tour of 3 different online mappers. And I wanted to mention a couple of other sources of information that might be useful as you're learning about your watershed. So the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance on their website has a reference library with a wealth of information. And I think this is one of the really important roles that watershed groups play, is compiling all this information so that it's easy to access for people from the public. The Wallkill River Watershed Conservation and Management Plan was written in 2007. So it's over 10 years old, but still includes some really important information. Riverkeeper, of course, has their data on bacteria and Enterococcus monitoring to indicate potential fecal contamination and sewage. And municipal plans are also a really important source of information: natural resource inventories, open space plans, and so on. This is a map I pulled from the Town of Gardeners website. I understand that they're working on a natural resource inventory project right now. And because our friend the PLATTEKILL Creek is a trout water, you see it's highlighted purple here. So even though the stream crosses municipal boundaries, it's mapped here on this natural resource inventory in a really clear and easy to understand way. So how might you use this information? I think these mappers are a really great way to get to know your watershed better and really understand the context. So understanding the hucks, these watershed delineations, where smaller streams like the PLATTEKILL fit into the larger context of the Wallkill River watershed. There are 70 tributaries that Arif mentioned, so we can start to scale down and get to know our backyard stream, our neighborhood stream, our municipal stream a little bit better. And I think there's also a great opportunity to understand what you see on the ground and how it fits into what's understood and mapped. So you might see things that don't reflect the current conditions that are mapped, or vice versa. Having this information at your fingertips can also help inform water quality monitoring. So particularly streams that are no known impact or unassessed on the priority water bodies list are really well suited for WAVE, which is DEC's Water Assessments by Volunteer Evaluators program, a citizen science program. And my understanding is that WAVE is doing online trainings and moving forward even with COVID-19. And I actually went to check, and WAVE has been done in the PLATTEKILL Creek, so that's been taken advantage of. All of this information can also be really helpful as a foundation for a watershed characterization. A watershed characterization is the first step to create a watershed management plan, which is very well described in the New York State Department of State's Watershed Planning Guidebook. So many of the data layers, the maps, the information that you would need to collect for a watershed characterization are already at your fingertips through these online mapping tools. So there's an opportunity to make some headway and really get to know your watershed. There also might be opportunities to identify actions using this information, opportunities to protect or restore resources like riparian buffers, wetlands, or small streams. And I wanted to give a shout out to the Monhegan Brook Watershed Conservation and Management Plan. This was completed last year by Orange County Water Authority and Orange County Soil and Water Conservation District. And this is an example of a watershed management plan for a tributary to the Wallkill River. So certainly you can do a large scale Wallkill River watershed plan or a smaller scale tributary management plan. So to wrap up, I know I've gone through this really quickly, but I wanted to have plenty of time for questions. There is a wealth of information that's available out there online, and there's also lots of guidance on how to use these tools. So I wanted to give a broad brush stroke of what information is out there and how you might use it, how I use these tools. But if you're looking for more details on how to really use each of these tools, that information is also out there. And I think this time is also a really great opportunity to connect with your neighborhood watershed and really get to know the streams in your community. So that's it from me. I'll stop the share. Okay.
Great, thanks, Emily. Any other questions relating to, oh, there's one question in the Q&A here. Has there been any data published on effects of living off the river, any damage from the bacteria / effects to children? Well, we do know, that, especially in terms of fertilizers, and that can lead to harmful algae blooms, which are toxic to people. And as well as enterococcus from sewer outfalls can be detrimental to health. So as far as living off of the river and fishing is not highly recommended out of the Wallkill River, mostly for paddling in terms of recreation. Existing data that you wish to be added to these mappers?
Yes, yeah. So as I was using the DECINFO locator, I realized that they don't have watersheds on their mapper, and so it was actually a little challenging to see. There's a streams layer, there's lots of other great information on there, but it is sort of a heavier water infrastructure focus. And so it would have been really helpful to also have watersheds in the, I know, Ingrid, that you don't manage the DECINFO locator, but that was something that I think would be helpful. I'd have to think about other sources of data. The WAVE data is on a different mapper. Oh, great. Thank you for passing that along to the people who manage that tool.
That's a good point too by Dan.
Yeah, I don't know that everyone can see the Q&A, so I'll just read. Dan mentions that the DEC mapper also only has larger municipal wastewater treatment plants, but not many of the smaller type 2 treatment plants, of which there are many. And Rob Ferry is asking for construction site information too.
Yeah, that's a great point. Oh, great. Thank you, Nate. In the chat there with information on how to use, more information on how to use the natural resource mapper.
So there's a question for me from Alex. Emily, please tell us more about the Central Hudson Dam release at Dashville Dam. And I don't know very much at all about the Dashville Dam and the Central Hudson Dam releases. So I'm sorry I can't answer that question. I don't know if anyone else knows about that.
I don't know much about that, no, I'm sorry.
And then Bill Fetter asks, are there any plans to segment the Riverkeeper study to focus on individual contaminant sources?
I'm not sure about that.
Okay, so Dan Shapley writes in the chat that the Central Hudson dams at Sturgeon Pool and Dashville are to be licensed by FERC for the first time, so we will learn more about their operation and be able to push for regulations. Thank you, Dan. I also see a question from Joanne Chack. Is the lower Wallkill impaired? And if so, what is being done about it? I can field this unless someone else would like to. Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so the lower Wallkill is listed as impaired based on more recent monitoring that was conducted. And at the last year's Wallkill River Summit, the DEC announced that there would be a TMDL, so a total maximum daily load, that would be developed to understand pollutant sources and get more information about actions that can be taken to reduce phosphorus contamination in particular into the Wallkill River.
All right. That was great. Thank you all for, can we repeat on it? Yeah, just that we're not exactly sure about the Dashville Dam, and unfortunately, it sounds like maybe reaching out to Central Hudson has not been super helpful. But as far as we know, that would be the best avenue to go in terms of finding out more information, is to try and get it from Central Hudson.
It sounds like Dan and Riverkeeper are tracking it for their license.
Oh, I see here in the chat. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So when the dam applies for licensure from FERC, then that information should become public, and then we can find out more about their release schedules.
Can people get in touch with Dan about this?
Dan? Dan and Riverkeeper. Thank you, Dan.
All right.
So we have another segment of the Wallkill River Spring Summit series coming up next month. That's Tuesday, June 9th. And we'll have talks on how to work with elected officials with Jeremy Tillson from Riverkeeper. And Kyle will give an update on work of the Wallkill River Watershed Alliance over the past year. And we also wanted to mention that we had invited the Department of Health staff who had been working on the fish study. There's been a Department of Health study to understand the health of eating fish out of the Wallkill River. And given the COVID-19, the Department of Health staff are not able to come and present, but they're very much looking forward to sharing that information later this year. So hopefully there's lots more information to come, and thank you all for your questions.
Great. Thank you all so much for joining us, and looking forward to seeing you next month for the second part of the series. Have a good night, all.
Thanks. See ya.